and associates. If you are already a minion and you would like to tie, please hit like. If you would like to become a minion, please hit follow. If you would like subscribe, whichever. If you would like to, I don't know. Oh, if you would like to confess, please do so in the comments. And if you would like to evangelize, please follow. Or please share. Boy, I just got that one like totally screwed up. I'm looking at Orion Kelly today. Let me bring that up here. Bringing up Orion Kelly came up with the video here. Take a quick look at it. And let's see what Orion Kelly has to say. This is his channel. He just came out with this a few hours ago, 5 hours ago. So let's take a look and see what he has to say here. That was very loud.
It's something that affects many autistic adults, but you might not even know why. Auditory processing disorder. Let's explore it and give you some practical tips to navigate auditory processing challenges effectively. Welcome, my stars of Orion. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Orion Kelly, that autistic guy. I'm all about providing validation and support for autistic people and their loved ones. Auditory processing and autism. Let's chat briefly about what is auditory processing disorder, or APD. So in general terms, APD is a condition where the brain has difficulty processing sounds, even though the ears are functioning normally. You may experience APD, but thought you were losing your hearing. Went and got your hearing tested, and they said, you have perfect hearing. And you're like, huh? What do I do now? Obviously, I'm not a doctor or a healthcare practitioner, so I'm just giving you general information to get your head around APD. Okay, so let's break it down from the point of view of how we hear. When we hear sounds, our ear detects the noise, but our brain processes the information to make sense of what we've just heard. For people with APD, there's a breakdown in how the brain interprets these sounds. This leads to various things, including difficulty hearing in noisy environments, problems following conversations, especially group conversations, and sound discrimination issues. Yes, you heard me right. What does that mean? It means differentiating between similar sounds or words can be really difficult. So what's the...
When a sound and a tone of a hum of a motor or something like that and a word are the same, then they neutralize each other out, and basically you can't hear either one. It just becomes a kind of thing.
The connection between auditory processing disorder and autism? Well, some research suggests a significant overlap between APD and autism, with up to 50% of autistic people experiencing symptoms of APD. Now, this overlap could be attributed to the shared sensory processing difficulties experienced in both conditions. So for example, an autistic person may have a hypersensitivity to sound, which obviously exacerbates the problem. And by problem, obviously, I mean the challenges posed by auditory processing disorder. It's also been suggested that autistic people have differences in the structure and function of the auditory cortex, so the part of the brain responsible for processing sound. And these differences can impact how sounds are perceived and understood. Let me give you some practical examples of how an autistic adult may experience auditory processing disorder. A difficulty in following conversations. This can include struggling to...
And difficulty in definitely in public and even in movies and so forth. It can be difficult to follow the conversations. And in movies, a lot of times they'll say one very important thing once, and you know, the rest of the movie's carried on it. And if you didn't catch that one line, then you're kind of done.
To keep up with group.
And when that happens throughout the movie, then the movie just becomes unenjoyable because you have no idea what's going on.
Conversations that have overlapping voices. Another example is background noise sensitivity. Due to some autistic people's hypersensitivity to sound, we can become overwhelmed by environments, which causes us to not be able to actually understand what we're hearing. Now, I mentioned this briefly at the start, but I want to zero in on how this manifests for autistic people, and that is sound discrimination issues. issues. Because frankly, having an autistic kid, and me myself, I find this actually is pretty relevant. I really resonate with this particular example. Do you find it difficult distinguishing between similar sounds? Now, these can be the sounds of letters. Quick example, distinguishing.
And the thing is when you have these difficulties with these particular sounds, and you're like, I can't hear, and the audiologist says, no, you can hear fine, and leave it at that, they are being irresponsible, because they're not, when they don't mention audio processing disorder, they are being completely irresponsible. That's all there is.
Between B and P. B for Bob, P for Peter. Or cat and cap. Cat meow, cap on your head. Another example is delayed responses. Countless times in my videos I've talked about how autistic people process things differently, and as a result can take longer to process things. Like we talked about earlier, the ear hears the noise, the brain interprets what it is it's actually hearing. Autism is the brain. There will be longer processing time for our brain to try and interpret what it is we have just heard. That's going to impact not only our ability to interpret it, but in a time frame seen appropriate by neurotypical people. It can create barriers. It can create disjointed conversations. But this example of how autistic adults experience APD, I can resonate with. Difficulty with instructions. Simply struggling to follow multi-step verbal instructions is one thing. But then if you add noisy environments or other stimuli, it's just about impossible. Another example is misinterpreting questions. Oh man. Are you someone who is frequently...
That's because you may actually hear the wrong words. And what I mean by that is your brain will interpret a word that is wrong, but it will make sense in the context of the sentence, although the person may be saying something else entirely than what you understood, because that one word was wrong, and you understood girdle instead of turtle or something like that. And you will actually hear the word girdle instead of turtle. So that becomes a big problem, particularly if for some reason it works in context of the sentence.
For the question to be repeated. Or, as some would say even worse, certainly what I do, follow up clarifying questions to the question. That's not because we want to be annoying. That's because potentially the question was misheard or misinterpreted. Fatigue from listening. Another example of how autistic adults can experience APD. So do prolonged sessions of listening. This could just be long conversations, gatherings. This could be lectures, school, work, whatever it is. Do you find that sucks your energy dry? And this shouldn't be a shock. Mental exhaustion from your brain trying to interpret what it's hearing over extended periods of time, prolonged periods of time, that seems like a no-brainer. That's probably the wrong thing to say. But this example is an unacceptable reality of life. Phone calls. Yes, an example is a difficulty with phone calls. Whether you're diagnosed with auditory processing disorder or as an autistic person...
Now, I on my voicemail for my phone, my message says, I am deaf, do not leave a message here. And people still... My voicemail is full, by the way. It's made zero difference whatsoever. My voicemail is completely full. Even though I've asked people not to do this. But the reason is I don't understand necessarily what's being said in the message. And I can play it over and over and over. And if there's any kind of anything going on, I may not be able to understand that message at all. And if there's any problem with the phone system, then I'm really screwed. So I ask people not to do that at all. And of course they tend to anyway, I found. But that's just it is what it is, I guess, you know. All right, let's go on.
You simply have auditory processing challenges. Phone calls should be banned. But the point is, Hearing someone talk on the phone is different to hearing someone talk in person. Sometimes the autistic brain can simply struggle if we can't visually see the person talking to us or simply hear them in real life surround sound rather than some poor quality phone device. Another example is inconsistent sound perception. In basic terms, that's actually when an autistic person simply doesn't hear or respond to a certain sound, leading others to think you're simply ignoring them. How about this example? Sensitivity to certain frequencies. Autistic people. The neighborhood dog. Do you experience discomfort, even pain, from certain sound frequencies? And this can be anything.
Hell yeah.
It can be high-pitched alarms. It can be certain music, some animal sounds, the wind coming through a squeaky door, whatever it is. I can relate to this. But this example is so me. Mishearing words. As an autistic person with auditory processing challenges, do you feel like you are almost
That's the biggest deal for me, is mishearing words.
always mishearing words? Frankly, in my situation, this often just leads to funny situations. I mean, it can be funny, it can be complicated, it can be bad, it can be sad, it can be everything. But for me, sometimes I'll mishear words. I'll say the word I thought I heard and people just find it funny. And I'm cool with that because in the end, it is funny. But it's still an experience that might not be funny to others. Okay, stand by for an autistic paradox. As autistic people, and I've spoken about this, we, with our speech, can be very atypical. Okay, so we don't necessarily have a good grasp of the tone, the pace, the volume, right? And we can be loud, fast talkers. Now, the issue here is an example of APD for autistic people is in fact a difficulty with rapid speech. Yes, autistic people can speak fast and loud, but that has no relevance to our brain's ability to hear someone else speaking fast and be able to hear it and then interpret it. This is actually a challenge, certainly for me as an autistic person. Oh, and don't start me on people that mumble. Enunciate your words, champ. Struggling to hear in noisy environments, a lot of autistic people probably think, I'm just going deaf. I've got an issue with my hearing. Maybe I need my ears cleaned, whatever it is. In fact, that, in some situations, can be an example of experiencing APD. So it's not that you are losing your hearing, it is that your brain is struggling to interpret what you're hearing in busy, overstimulated environments.
And particularly with speech. And with me, it's very much with speech. Or if there's multiple things going, machines that are going on or whatever at the same time that are all at the same tone, then I won't be able to hear things. Like there's a refrigerator alarm that's on our refrigerator. If there's certain things going on the TV, I won't be able to hear that. It just cancels it out. And this happens very easily. And I notice this is not as common as with people around me. They can differentiate the differences in the sounds, particularly my wife.
Another example which I reckon you might relate to as an autistic adult experiencing some sort of auditory processing challenge is around accents. Now, you may be watching and you aren't Australian. I'm from Australia. I have an Australian accent. You may not. You may understand what I'm saying. You may not. The question is, would you say that my particular accent is a quite strong, very different dialect that is hard to understand, or is it pretty similar to yours? Either way, these become challenges. So I think the stronger the accent, the more different the dialect, the harder it is for our brain.
Now that can be very true. Now I'm used to listening to a lot of different English dialects because I have friends from all over the world, and talking to them, I just get used to how English people say things and how different English people from different parts of England or the UK, people from the UK, how they speak differently. Same thing with Australia and Canada, etc.
Did I say Bane? You think darkness is your ally. I meant brain. to interpret it, and let's just move on. I was born in the darkness. It's my bane. Another example where you might think you're actually losing your hearing or having a hearing issue, and you've got it checked out and they've said, no, perfect. An example of experiencing APD is actually, do you rely heavily on like visual cues? So I must need these because
Like right now, I literally have the captions on. I can understand what he's saying pretty good, but I pretty much have the captions on most of the time, so that way, there I can try to pick up on those words that I missed.
my hearing's going bad. Like, it could be gestures, lip reading, written text, the supplementary information you can get. Is that a reliance you have? It's another example. But this example might really reverberate with you.
And a lot of it's a lot of lip reading too. That's for sure.
And that is issues with echoic environments. You think darkness is irrelevant.
Yeah, he's in a very echoey environment. He needs to put a carpet in it. In the United States, we have carpets on our floors everywhere. Our actual rugs throughout the entire room, rather than throw rugs or whatever. Um, and that makes a lot of difference in the echo of the sound. But I can definitely hear that he's definitely has a hardwood floor of some sort, and there's no baffles on the ceilings, and that room that he's in is relatively empty. What we're seeing now is the bulk of what's actually in that room. I think it's an empty room. I think it's a very small room. What's behind him is all of the studio, and what's in front of him is a camera, and there's not much room behind that camera, if any room in that room at all. Also, the echo is very, very fast if you listen to the echo.
Do you struggle to process speech in these types of environments with echoes and reverb? That can be big halls, like gyms. You know what I'm talking about. That can be a real challenge. Challenge. Problems with public announcements. That can be an issue too, an example of experiencing APD. So what I mean is, it might be at the train station, the bus station, the airport, shopping centres, schools, work. These like in the roof things. What in the world is that? And it's almost, in my opinion, it's almost impossible to understand. It's like they got the microphone and they thought, you know what, I reckon this is one of those edible microphones. I'm going to shove it in. Once it starts digesting, I'll start talking. Thank you for your attention.
What? Yep.
What the just happened? Do you have a difficulty with rhythmic sounds or just a difficulty with rhythm? Because I don't. They call me Dr. Rhythm. But this example of how we can experience auditory processing challenges as autistic people is a real challenge for me, 100%. A sensitivity to unexpected noises. If I could sum up my overall temperament in one word, I'd say startled. If I could go back and rewrite what I just said, I'd say 2 words maybe. And it'd be better explained by saying easily startled. Do you know what I mean? Noises that just come out of nowhere is a real challenge for me because you become distressed. And it's almost impossible for your brain to interpret what in the hell you're hearing now. Because that one thing has snapped you out of it. This example can really impact relationships. So as an autistic person, if you have auditory processing challenges, misinterpreting the tone or the pitch of someone, that's obviously a big issue, right? Because, well, what if it isn't an issue and you make it one? You defend yourself or fight back or be aggressive or take it the wrong way because your brain simply took it that way. It heard it, it interpreted it, right, it must be an attack. This kind of stuff especially prominent in relationships with others. Misunderstandings could lead to emotional issues, breakdown issues in relationships. Even sarcasm can lead to you attacking them when they were just joking. Problems with auditory memory is another example. A quick and easy way to look at this particular example is someone tells you, can you do A, B, and C today? So they've asked you to do something verbally. You may have heard it, but has your brain registered it, interpreted it, and memorized it. That's a whole different story. And this doesn't have to just be demands, like lists of things to do. This could be instructions. This could be, and I hate this one, people's names. I never, ever remember people's names. I hate that I don't, but I don't know why. Where does it go? What happened? But this example is just plain funny. I hope you'll agree.
Okay, he's getting a bit rambly here.
It's misunderstanding the lyrics in songs.
Ryan Kelly can
How
do that.
How good is it when people get the words to songs wrong? I love that I do it. I'm not saying it's funny for everyone, but it's definitely another example. And going from music to other forms of entertainment.
There's actually a name for that, and I cannot remember what that word is, but there's actually a name for getting the lyrics of songs incorrect.
TV, movies. Do you find speech in some TV and movies especially hard to follow, to understand, to get? And regardless of whether it's a loud action background environment or just a standard dialogue scene, you may need the volume to be at a certain level. And even when the volume's at an adequate level, you still may rely on subtitles. Now, again, we're talking about people who've had their hearing checked and said, no, your hearing's great. This is another example of auditory processing. Have you ever tried to learn a new language?
And that's a key thing right there. If you get your hearing checked and they say that your hearing's fine, that's a key sign that you may have audio processing disorder. Absolutely.
And found it really difficult? That's another example. A difficulty in learning new languages. Hearing how the words are meant to be said. This can be really tricky. And no matter how many times they say, no, it says like this, and you say it back, and that's what I'm saying. No, you say it like this. I'm saying it like that. No, you're not. It's like, yeah. But as a parent or carer of an autistic person, this might ring true. Okay, an inconsistent response to sounds. An example is the name. Do you often ask someone by name, so Orion, and they fail to respond, and you think they're simply ignoring you? Guess what? Most of the time we are, because you're just annoying. But no, but seriously, it's actually a challenge. If it wasn't, then why do all autistic people seem to have a very similar issue in responding to the sound of their own name? Before I give you some practical tips on how to navigate auditory processing challenges, I have to share some of your experiences. I asked for you guys to share your auditory processing challenges on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and X, and you guys did well. Here's just some of them, my friend. This one is from Laurel. I often have to adapt to a person's voice, way of speaking, accent, vocab, before I can understand them well. Sometimes it's harder, sometimes easier, depending on how similar their way of speaking is to my way or to what I'm already used to. It's like fine-tuning a radio frequency on an old school finicky radio. That's awesome. Right. Pointing the antenna in different ways in order to have reception and being able to hear and understand what's being said. With some people, like with some radio stations, it's impossible to get good reception. Anyone?
A lot of times there will be waitresses that'll come up, and if I can hear them, I'll engage them now. But a lot of times I can't hear them at all, and I won't even bother. I just look at my wife, and she'll take over because she knows that I just can't hear at all. A lot of times, though, sometimes if I can, I'll engage, but if not, I don't even bother. And particularly, I have a hard time with higher female voices. So,
what else? Thanks, Laurel. That's great. I love that experience. An experience from Barbara. Music lyrics. So incredibly difficult. I know every note played, but the words elude me. Very relatable. An experience from Sage. For a couple of years in primary school, I was really struggling with auditory processing. My family started calling me Cabana because I would always respond to it. It's like a snack. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't like it, but I couldn't argue with their logic. It's hard to get my attention if you're behind me, particularly in an enclosed space, like a kitchen where multiple people are talking. Always had auditory processing difficulties, particularly if there are multiple sounds going on at once. Yeah, had my hearing tested and zero issues. It's just processing I have difficulty with. Another experience I bet you can resonate with. From Taito, I have issues with auditory processing constantly. I think one of the awkwardest but also one of the most entertaining times it happened was during this work-based learning field trip I had in high school. I was paired up with one of my classmates whom I didn't really know that well at the time, and the two of us were told to set up workstations for a new office that was being set up. My classmate tried to make a joke about the cables we were using, and no joke, it took me 3 times of having her repeat herself to hear what she had said, and then it took me another whole minute for me to realise why it was funny. I thought for sure this would forever live on as my most awkward moment of high school, but her and I eventually ended up becoming best friends, and still are. How good is that? So now I look back at these moments and laugh. Take me to your leader. This isn't something that made me laugh, but one way mine manifests is that I very quickly get overwhelmed if someone verbalizes a ton of information to me at once in a long monologue. Don't watch the rest of this video. Part of my negative reaction to it is from childhood trauma of having to listen to endless monologues from a narcissistic mother. However, it's also because I'm trying to digest the first point and then the person keeps piling on additional points and I can't keep up. Absolutely. The way my mind works, I need to evaluate all the information before making a decision. So I'm trying not to miss anything important. But the onslaught of information is making it impossible. Yes. No idea how to say this one, so I'll just go to the comment asking, what? Like I didn't understand them. But a second later, as they repeat what they've said, being annoyed and want to interrupt them because it's arrived in my brain then. This is so relatable to me. You know, someone will say something to you and you'll be like, what? But then before they've even got the second word out of what they were saying, you've answered the question. So it's like you're filling the gap of processing. But sorry, what? Oh, yeah. I can totally relate to that. From Jonathan, more than 3 people in the room or just the TV on and I can't decipher what's being said. Yep, background noise, additional noise, multiple noises, big issue.
Absolutely. Background noise is huge.
Point where someone has told me something terrible happened to them and I laughed because I didn't understand the content. Absolutely, can relate to that. This one from Shadow. I almost always have to ask my boss to repeat things. Because not only will I not hear things if someone talks unexpectedly, but he has a soft, deep voice that's hard for me to understand. Yeah, this is the thing with tone and pace and different things. Absolutely. I would get report cards in grade school saying I was doing great at almost everything, but I didn't pay attention. That was because I'd be focused on something else and the teacher would say something and I'd be blocking everything, especially speech, out so I could concentrate enough to do my work. An experience from Isabel. I may hear what you say.
Now, with what they were saying there, a lot of times, if I'm trying to process what was just said and they keep on going, my mind will block them out in order to process what they said previously. So now they're on a different subject, and by the time my brain catches up, I have no idea where they are or what they're talking about at all.
But not be able to separate the syllables or the words. So it's just noise without any meaningful message. Yes. I also have a very hard time knowing which sounds a human voice versus environmental noises. Okay, that's a great experience. So in a noisy environment, I have a very hard time understanding a conversation. Absolutely. I may also need to replay what you said several times to be able to understand it. I may not be able to summarize what's been said. I may need visual support to remember instructions given verbally. Yes, an experience from Carolyn. Mostly, I hear gibberish and laugh because I just turn the sound I heard from the word, sentence said to me into what I literally heard the sounds creating. Absolute nonsense. Would you like some turkey?
Okay, and when she says she literally into what I literally heard the sounds creating. So, like I said, a person can say I walked to town and you can hear I flew with the clown or something like that, and it may make zero sense whatsoever, but that's what you hear. And so you look at that person and you're laughing because what they said was ridiculous. You know they didn't say that, and now you have to figure out what they actually did say.
Can turn into woolly like turmeric. And I think, what the hell? What wool? What turmeric? What are you talking about? I do this a lot. I do the exact same thing a lot. You say back to them gibberish, like, is that what you said? Clearly it wasn't what you said, but that's what you heard, and I totally get it. I heavily rely on lip reading, so if someone's face is covered, it becomes really much harder. All right, a comment from Mike. I've struggled with this all my life, trying to make sense of conversations in noisy environments or with other background sounds, or when the speaker has their back to me. Okay. TV and radio these days seem to have some
Long live the Mayo.
sort of background music during presentations like news, traffic alerts, etc., and I find that so distracting. I've always struggled with using the telephone as I can't see a face to have some backup from lip reading. Also, in a work environment and being left-handed, I'd have to hold the handset in my right hand to my left preferred ear to free my left hand for taking notes. Okay. I had several hearing tests over the years, including a brain scan which did not show any hearing impairment. It wasn't until my ASD diagnosis last year that the cause of my difficulties were explained. And one final experience from Alice.
Right. And that's why I think that when audiologists find that people have, well, first of all, they need to be able to identify it. And that's obviously a very big problem for them at this point in time. But once they have identified that someone says that they cannot hear and they are testing that they can hear physically, then they obviously should be evaluated for audio processing disorder. If they do have audio processing disorder, they should automatically be checked for autism spectrum disorder. That's just my biased opinion.
Listen, I really struggle when people have a strong accent or speak too fast. I failed my French A-level because of the listening part. I can absolutely experience the exact same thing. I tried to learn French. Comme ci, comme ça. I could read French well, but when I listen to it spoken, I can't tell where one word starts and another finishes. Here we go, my friends, some practical tips to help autistic adults navigate auditory processing challenges. Number one, seems obvious, but something you should definitely at least look into. Maybe it won't work for you, but maybe it will, and that is using noise cancelling headphones. I know this seems like a really generic, everyone does this example, but frankly, these things, now, they could be like the little, AirPod things, or they could be like your big boys, yeah? I've got both for different situations. Bottom line is they can reduce the background noise and increase your focus. And that also helps with your regulation. So it's a win-win. The next tip is using those speech-to-text apps. You heard of these? I've seen some people in Zoom meetings who are there twice, and why they're twice, then I realize, the other one of them says it's like Otter AI or something. So it's kind of like these live transcripts that are created during meetings. Presumably that is because they struggle with auditory processing and they want to be able to digest what's being said, not only in real time, but probably at a later point. And I think sometimes before the meeting's even finished, they've been able to provide key takeaways, which is kind of a phenomenal thing to use. So those apps seem
their AI is doing some pretty amazing things, and it's definitely going a long way for helping.
a really great, fix for this kind of challenge. Creating quiet spaces where you work or where you live can also be super beneficial. But this tip is something I use all the time, and that is request written instructions. It's okay to tell people, actually, I'm not up for a quick call. I don't want you to run me through it on the phone. Honestly, I'd prefer that we did like a text conversation or an email conversation, something that I can physically look at, process in my own time, and then respond back to you with follow-up questions when they come to me. Worst thing you can ever ask an autistic person at the end of a conversation is, any questions? Are you serious? Yeah, I'll have the questions at about 3:00 this morning. Yeah, so can I call you back then? Hold, please. This tip is simple but powerful. Limit the background noise. Control the controllables. But this tip to help autistic adults manage auditory processing challenges can be really powerful, and that is strategic seating. It sounds really corporate, but it really just means choose where you sit, mate. Why in the world are you letting people push you into sitting by the door or in the noisiest part of the workplace or the cafe? Tell them, I'd like to sit over there, or we're going to sit here because this seems like the quietest spot. Another tip, take breaks.
A lot of times sitting very up front, there is less echo in a room if you're close to the speaker. The echo is still in the room. It's just that you can hear the person speaking before the echo muffles it out. In the back of the room, it's just going to get muffled out, and it's going to be very difficult to understand them.
Breaks. autistic brain, processing differently, experiencing the world differently. Yes, we are going to need additional brain breaks. It don't have to be for long. And in that time, do something that helps you feel regulated, brings you joy. Take a breather, right? This is not rocket science, but I know it's something you are failing to do because I failed to do it. So do it, mate. Another tip is to communicate your preferences. Autistic people are so bad at this. I reckon I have this as a tip in lots of videos. Has it got through yet? No. Why? Because we were born saying we're wrong, broken, not acceptable, misfits, out of place. You better become like us to be accepted. So why in the world we then tell you we have our own personal preferences? We already feel like we're putting the world out. This is the end of that, my friends. It stops here. Let others know about your auditory processing challenges. Yes, be open and honest about it. Tell them why you experience it. Tell them you aren't hard of hearing. You've had your ears checked. This is a real thing. And as a result, these are my preferred ways of communicating. Maybe there's something about closed captions that you haven't thought would work for you in the past. Have you tried them? At least try them. I find I use closed captions when I watch any video on YouTube. Like seriously, regardless of what video is on YouTube, I like to close captions just to be there. And I find a lot of times I'm listening, so the volume's up, but I'm reading. Now, conversely, I struggle with this sometimes when I'm watching a TV show or a movie where others live and die by it. So if you haven't tried it, give it a go. But this next tip may trigger more unwanted jokes from me. And that is minimize echo. You'll think darkness is your ally. You know what I'm saying? Minimize the...
Oh no, the echo. Yeah, but like the echo in your studio there is freaking horrible. Now what you need to do is hang some towels from the top of the ceiling or something to act as baffles to slow that noise refraction down, and put a dang carpet in that room. And you can also put up blankets all the way around the room too to help minimize that echo. There's all kinds of things you can do. They're real easy and real cheap.
Areas you're in, man, that are going to echo and bounce and reverb and give you the whole...
You can even just throw sheets on the floor when you're right before you record, and that will help a lot.
Hello. Hi. Another tip, have you tried adjusting your device settings to help you with auditory processing? Bottom line is what you're looking at doing is using your settings to enhance the clarity of what you're hearing, therefore reducing the distortion, the distractions. Like all autistic people, when you find your tribe, it's the best thing ever. You relate, you resonate, you help each other, you support each other. The whole point of my whole community here. This is a community you can definitely be supported in. You might find other support groups locally. You can talk about these issues. What works for you? What's happening here? And I always say this, but this is the thing. Find your tribe. They will help you. Pre-meeting preparation is another example of how you can manage auditory processing challenges. How do you do this? So before meetings, before get-togethers, review what you have leading into it. It might be agendas, topics, run sheets, rundowns, right? Whatever it is, try to review that. So in other words, you're studying before you're going into this exam. And that can help you in, okay, we're talking about this. I get this context. Simplifying communication is so powerful. So you want to be able to process things you're hearing, you could ask people to simply break down what they're saying into simple, easier, understandable, bite-sized chunks. Now I feel like a chocolate bar. To learn more about other conditions linked to autism, check out my playlist, Co-occurring Conditions.
All right. That was Orion Kelly talking about audio processing disorder. Okay, that was good. I'm glad I did watch that. Now I'm going to be moving right along. Oh my goodness gracious.